Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Everyone, welcome into the program. I hope that you're doing well. And a little side effect. We'll talk about that in just a moment, exactly what it is I just picked up on, but it's cool. It's a good thing. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into Computer America. I hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving and a wonderful Black Friday. Hopefully you found something to do online. There have been some pretty good deals. And ladies and gentlemen, hey, if there's a good time for tech, I can't imagine the holidays, not being that. So everyone, welcome into the program. And before we get started, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including past shows, future shows, show notes, articles, all that and more in one single place. And there you will also find a section dedicated to Ralph Bond at the top. And that fits for today because, well, you guessed it. Ralph Bond joins us here to talk all about science and technology trends. And all of his past segments, future segments, current segments, and more importantly, the show notes for the show that you are listening to right now will be available at computeramerica.com right there. So that if you're busy, if your hands are tied, don't worry about it. Well, hey, we have all the links and everything that you can look it up because sometimes we just talk about stories that seem so incredulous that, sometimes they warrant a follow-up. And of course, there's also the honorable mentions, which we will get to later on in the program. But with all that being said, let's go ahead, bring Ralph on and just have fun with it. And once again, he is our science and tech trends correspondent, longtime Computer America contributor, and of course, hey, really great guy. Ralph, how you been?
I'm doing okay. And again, I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. We all did. It was hectic and crazy with all the grandkids and family members in a small home, relatively speaking, and it was exciting. But hey, if you're new to the show, I want to welcome you, of course, Ben and I do. And what we do every Friday, we highlight 4 articles that show us key trends and developments in a host of things: artificial intelligence, robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, agricultural tech, construction tech, space research, physics, you name it. But most important all, this is the key thing. We're going to give you hope for a better future thanks to amazing breakthroughs happening every single day in the world of science and technology.
Absolutely. And I think for our first story, we're going to go ahead and just, kick it off. Story number 1. And let's go ahead and talk a little bit about, water. And, that's always been a pretty big issue. And, as climate change is kind of really kicking off, making things fun for a lot of people, startups like these and technology like these are hopefully going to meet the demands of a lot of people. So, yeah, Ralph, story number 1.
Yes, in the world of water and the crisis of having drinkable water available to a larger part of the world's population, this story is kind of an interesting little nugget in that effort. This comes from The Cool Down, which is a news outlet segment that's part of MSN. And the headline here: startup develops incredible technology to pull water from unexpected source. And the subhead is, this is just the beginning of what's possible. It doesn't really tell you what's going on with the title here, but we're going to get into this. This is kind of a fun story, mainly not because it's super advanced technology, but because it's a clever, interesting idea going after a certain part of the agricultural business world. So this is an agri-tech, if you want to call it that, kind of story. So let's get into this. Could the water inside crops help save resources during droughts? And the author of the article goes on to say, it may sound like wishful thinking, but not to agricultural startup Botanical Water Technologies. That's the name of the company. And the company has partnered with Ingomar Packing Company, a California-based industrial tomato processor, to help the state's San Joaquin Valley survive drought conditions. A little bit ironic because lately I think California has been just deluged with tremendous amount of bizarre rain, which is great, but it's kind of funny. But anyway, nonetheless, it's still an important issue to get water back into the system. This is a recycling story, if you want to look at it that way, too. Going on, it says here, most fruits and vegetables are made up of high percentages of water. That includes tomatoes. I didn't know this. Tomatoes are, I knew they were very juicy, but they're 95% water, tomatoes. But here's the deal, guys. When you take tomatoes and you process them to create tomato paste or cut them up, dice them up for canning, what happens is a significant amount of water is lost. That's the key here in this recycling story. And that's where botanical water technology saw an opportunity and developed what it calls water harvest units. And this technology can collect excess steam and wastewater during crop processing, like tomato paste production, dicing tomatoes for canning. And that can be purified, that water, and safely added back into the water supply. So this basically, Ben, is a classic recycling kind of story and technology.
But I guess traditionally water has been a byproduct, and and I know you said recycling like a waste product, but water is a little bit different than like dangerous chemicals or this or that. Like you just think of water as just something you just kind of dump on the ground and it goes in and it goes away and that's the ecosystem. But they want to be a bit more, I guess, thoughtful with their runoff water.
Yes, exactly right. And there's a little side note here in the show notes. By the way, friends, please come out to computeramerica.com. Get the show notes, especially if you're listening to us as a podcast. We have pictures, we have links, we have sometimes videos, all kinds of things that augment the story. And a little bit more about botanical water technologies. Their harvesting units, they call them, are designed as containerized modular systems that can be integrated directly into food processing plants. They are essentially self-contained units housed in shipping container-style enclosures, which makes them portable and relatively easy to drop in alongside existing industrial infrastructure. So if you have the show notes, you can see the pictures that we have in the article that they basically size-wise look exactly like a shipping container. Think of those big ships with all those box-like things. Well, this is what these look like. And so it's a very clever idea of having something modular that can be dropped into a processing plant like the Ingomar facility. And the purification process, well, what happens is the harvested water is filtered and purified using botanical water technology's proprietary system. And here's what they do. The process removes sugars, fibers, and impurities, leaving pure plant-sourced water. That's a fun term, plant-sourced water. And according to the company, this is the world's first plant-sourced pure water system, according to them. And botanical water's technology harvesting units can produce up to 100,000 gallons of potable water per day during harvest season in the Ingomar plant case history. Just amazing. And to wrap things up, amazing results. So this collaboration between Ingomar Packing Company and Botanical Water Technologies, they were able to harvest 1 billion, with a B, 1 billion liters of drinking water in 90 days from tomatoes, helping drought-stricken regions. Wow.
The mission statement on their website really, that 3 or 4 minute video that they have up on their site really shows that, this would be good for all, harvesting, processing. I'm thinking here in America with the tomatoes, like you were mentioning, but, their mission statement kind of says that, hey, in places in Africa and India and developing countries, this is, water is more than just something that, environmentally we should be conscious of, but there it's like, people spend hours a day just hauling water from one place to another. It's just a massive drain on people, time, energy, resources that, hey, something like this would make a huge difference. So it's really amazing. And going about it in a very sustainable way, it seems, because again, this is just, like you said, waste from what you're already doing. So.
Yeah, it is. It's a great recycling story. It hits cylinders, if you will, on many, many levels. And that's why I love that story.
For sure. It's a great, great story, number one. And I think a great way to kind of show people who may be new to listening to this, hey, this is a good example of what we kind of talk about, because I sure didn't hear about this over the Thanksgiving weekend. So, Ralph, thank you for bringing us story number one. Story number two. And hey, we know this name. Well, you may not know this one, PowerLattice, but you may know the other one. So, Ralph, let's talk about what this is and, power saving as well.
Yeah. Well, this comes from TechCrunch.com. The headline is PowerLattice, that's the name of a company, PowerLattice attracts investment from ex-Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger for its power-saving chiplet. And real quick, Pat, by the way, these days he was head of Intel, of course. Pat, these days, is involved with an outfit called Playground Global, and Playground Global is a venture capital firm and startup incubator based in Palo Alto, California. So that's his new reality. He does many things these days, but that's his main thing.
I'm always impressed by, people who have reached that level of achievement in their career. And, I don't know, Ralph, I maybe I'm just inherently lazy. Like if I had that level of success and that level of, let's face it, capital behind me, I'd be like, you might never hear of me again. But like, there are some people that have just the industry knowledge. They have the passion to drive the technology forward. And, they just, even though they really don't have to. Pat seems very passionate about pushing technology forward, and he gets involved in stuff like this. So impressed on that.
Yeah, absolutely right about Pat. Wonderful person. I had the great honor of being able to work with him a couple of times during my 14 years with Intel. And I just think the world of this guy, and I'm so glad he's involved with this venture capital firm these days. But let's get into the story. Here we go. As AI workloads grow, data centers are hitting limits on compute, cooling, and electricity. Boy, do Ben and you and I have talked about this with all these stories about how do we get more energy, more electricity available for these data centers. And of course, energy efficiency has become a top priority for chip makers these days as a result, right? So PowerLattice, a semiconductor startup founded in 2023 by engineers from Qualcomm, Nuvia, and Intel, has secured a $25 million Series A round led by Playground Global, that's Pat's outfit, and Celesta Capital, bringing a total of funding of $31 million. Now, the company claims its new power delivery chiplet, which actually is involved with regulating voltage, can reduce computer chip energy consumption by more than 50%, a breakthrough aimed at tackling the massive power demands of AI data centers these days, which we are all very, very familiar with. Now, in the show notes, I inserted more about how this chiplet works. It gets very geeky and very detailed and so forth, but we'll just kind of get into this at the highest level here. In most chips today, the power supply sits inches away from the processor, often on the motherboard. Electricity travels through long paths, losing efficiency and generating heat. PowerLattice's chiplet places the power delivery system hundreds of micrometers away from the central processing unit or the graphics processing unit cores, essentially right next to them. Now, remember, a micrometer, even though we're talking hundreds of micrometers, well, remember, a micrometer is 1/1,000,000th of a meter. So we're talking about a very short distance. And the result,
it may seem like a fraction of an inch, but yeah, that's a huge improvement.
It is a big, big change. And so the results, this cuts down resistance and energy loss, reduces conversion inefficiencies, enables faster, more stable voltage regulation. That's the key. And achieves, again, over 50% reduction in power consumption compared to conventional designs. Now, in the show notes, I've inserted even more details, an optional side note with lots of details about how this chiplet works and so on. You can come out to the show notes if you want to geek out and get more in depth with that part of the topic. But going on here, with graphic processor units now consuming up to 2 kilowatts each. And why GPUs? Again, that's NVIDIA. That has to do with AI processing and data centers, right? So with GPUs now consuming up to 2 kilowatts each, which PowerLattice's technology could help prevent data centers from tripling U.S. electricity consumption by 2028. Wow.
Yeah, I know that the demand will be there, and with all of them talk, all of this talk in this article about reducing energy costs by 50%. The pessimist in me, Ralph, is instantly like, okay, so they're just going to use twice as many. Like if you cut power in half, they're just going to use twice as many.
Okay, yeah.
But no, I mean that's still better than the alternative, which is just letting power demand surge. 3 times. You need to be able to tackle this somehow. So this seems very innovative, and it has some very big brains behind it. Their website is pretty flashy. You can see the gentleman there. They're founding it, and I'm sure a lot of the technology, Ralph, as you were outlining it, kind of goes over my head just a little bit. But
me too.
yeah, but redesigning the chip, it's it's hard to, so often, Ralph, sometimes we talk about stories that just kind of be like, they are kind of like, if you just throw everything that you know out previously and redesign it from the ground up, then, hey, you're good to go. But to be able to work with what already exists, that's the tricky part, because no one wants to throw away all the investment that we've already done. And this seems to hit that. This seems to be able to be integrated into future data centers. So
yeah, and Ben, you raised a good point when it comes to the strategy of how do we deal with providing electricity to these massive data centers. I think what you're seeing here with this chiplet is part of a total package. It's not the answer in itself. It's part of an answer. And the other parts of the answer would be more and more and more sustainable energy generation, solar, wind, you take your pick. And then combine that with this sort of power saving thing, it equals a better possibility for the future. You're quite right. If you just half the consumption of power, you'd be tempted to just load more things out and you find yourself in the same dilemma. No, if you quadruple, whatever, exponentially increase your sustainable energy generation through wind and solar and so on, then the combination equals a better future for all of this energy consumption with data centers.
Yep. If it makes anyone out there feel any better, I would say one of the bright spots last year that might have been or this year / last year that was overlooked was that the majority of all new energy to come online has been renewable. So, solar, wind, tidal, even some nuclear, if you want to throw that in there. But most of it was, solar and wind. And that means, Ralph, that, hopefully we get these data center, power consumption under control. But when it comes to generating new power, there's a real push for green energy.
Yeah.
Not just in the U.S. I'm sure it's still there in the U.S., but in the world, green energy is really making headway. So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. So story number 2, mini chiplets. You can add that to your vocabulary as well.
There it is.
Not just chips, but chiplets. Let's go ahead and skip on down to story number 3. And this one is, speaking of renewable energy, this one is an idea that has come up once or twice before. And I think we're going to keep hearing about it because, I don't want to say getting into space is easy. I mean, I think the Russian launch pad just had a disaster a couple of weeks ago, Ralph. So getting into space is still pretty difficult, but it's possible. And hey, it may be where you get your energy from in the future. So story number 3.
Yeah, story number 3 comes from good old interestingengineering.com, one of my favorite go-to sources. And I'm going to warn you, the headline's a little unintentionally misleading, but the headline is Space-Based U.S. Solar Firm Breaks World Record for Beaming Wireless Electricity. And we're going to explain why that's a little unintentionally misleading. We have links and pictures and all the good stuff in the show notes. So again, let's start with a reality check right up front. The technology outlined in the following article is not literally beaming electricity. What's happening is the conversion of solar energy into a concentrated beam of light via an optical laser, which is then transmitted wirelessly to solar panels that convert the light back into usable electrical power. So let's be clear about that. And it's unfortunate about the bit about beaming wireless electricity, but I get where the author was coming from. It makes sense. So here we go. US-based Starcatcher Industries. Starcatcher, that's a cool name. Starcatcher Industries has set a new world record with a test at NASA's Kennedy Space Center by beaming 1.1 kilowatts Again, they're saying wireless electricity. That's not the case. Surpassing DARPA's June 2025 record of 800 watts. Now, reminder, Ben, you remember back in July, in fact, on our July 11 show, we talked about DARPA smashes wireless power record beaming energy. That's more accurate. Beaming energy more than 5 miles away and using it to make popcorn. Remember that story?
Yeah, I think this article would instantly be more appropriate if they just switch wireless electricity to energy. But
exactly.
I definitely remember the July 11th show as well.
And that was true with the July 11 DARPA thing as well. But it just sounded more trick and cool to say wireless electricity like it's Nikola Tesla or something like that. Anyway, so the idea behind Starcatcher system goes back to 1968 when Peter Glaser proposed an idea involving placing solar arrays in orbit and beaming energy, that's correct, beaming energy, to Earth via microwaves or lasers. So this is an idea that's been around a very, very long time. Now,
the instant thing is just like imagining some kind of giant microwave floating in space, beaming it down to Earth, and just any bird that happens to be just caught between the two just gets microwaved instantly and just, falls out of the sky like a cartoon, roasted turkey or something like that. But this seems much more safe.
Yes, I would hope so. So other obvious advantages include continuous 24/7 power, no weather or night interruptions when you're gathering the energy up in space, right? And satellites can be positioned to always face the sun. Now, how does this work? Starcatcher's technology uses off-the-shelf solar panels and an optical multi-spectrum laser instead of microwaves. So the system transmits concentrated light beams to solar arrays, enabling them to generate the energy. So a side note here, an optical multi-spectrum laser is a laser system capable of producing or combining light across multiple wavelengths or spectral bands, rather than being limited to a single narrow wavelength. That's your geek out for the moment here. And Starcatcher's network collects sunlight in orbit, refines it into optimized wavelengths, and transmits it wirelessly. That's what's being transmitted, right? Not electricity. And initial applications could include supercharging satellites in orbit. I think this is really what the idea is about. You have these things up in orbit, they're gathering energy, they're transmitting it, and helping to keep charging satellites in orbit and powering orbital data centers. Orbital data centers, there's something to think about. And orbital in-orbit manufacturing satellites. Long-term goal, eventually, beaming power down to Earth. So there's where you get your connection to the dream of Peter Glaser.
I like their ambition where they're like, it's not a long-term goal. That's our immediate goal, is to power orbital data centers and manufacturing satellites.
That's pretty out there.
Yeah, two ideas which themselves are very long-term goals of humanity.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But in terms of bringing the reality here, it says the next step, the company says, will be an orbital demonstration planned for next year, 2026. And Starcatcher's breakthrough marks a major step toward practical space-based solar power with potential to revolutionize satellite operations and eventually deliver limitless clean energy to Earth. So there's their story, and unfortunately a misleading headline, but still a great story, a very interesting trend to follow.
Yeah, probably more so just like wrong terminology than intentionally trying to mislead.
Right.
But yeah, still, it's a wonderful idea. Like you said, we've seen it here and there before. I like the idea of powering other things in space. It seems like kind of beaming it down through the atmosphere. Not saying that wouldn't work. I mean, I'm sure there are people much smarter than me that say that it will. But the idea of running, weirdly enough, Rob, like running data centers in space. I don't hate that idea. You wouldn't really have to worry about cooling all that much. There's a lot of coldness out in space already for these things. I don't know. There's stuff to like in this article. I definitely like it a lot. It's
interesting. Yeah, it's intriguing.
It is interesting, and it is also engineering. So good job, interesting engineering, for living up to the name. So, story number 3 down. Story number 4, we're going to go ahead and talk about this. But Ralph does a special, kind of thing where story number 4 is usually always in the field of medicine. And Ralph's going to explain why. But story number 4.
Yeah, story number 4 is another great example of a huge trend in medical technology, and that's creating artificial organs, artificial tissues, and so on, along with bioreactor generated stuff too. I mean, it's a very interesting thing that's going on in the world of medical technology. This story comes from phys.org, short for physics.org, and the headline: Artificial cartilage mimics natural flexibility with adjustable structure. Wow, we've got a link. We have also a link to the research paper in here if you really want to geek out. There's a picture in the show notes of some of this artificial cartilage, which is very interesting. And this story, I'm out in Portland, Oregon area. This comes from my cousins up the way here in Washington State University. So Washington State University researchers in collaboration with Cornell University have developed a new method to grow artificial cartilage that mimics the natural tri-layered structure of human cartilage. So here we're going to geek out on cartilage. So tri-layer structure of human cartilage. So natural cartilage has a thin 2 to 4 millimeters, and it's composed of 3 layers. The bottom layer is stiff, vertical fibers attached to the bone. The middle layer is designed to absorb impact, and the top layer is smooth, lubricating, and flexible. So it's a complex 3-layer thing. So the challenge, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, it may seem, kind of like, okay, why are we learning about cartilage? But knowing exactly how it works, and Ralph, I say this is a trend that is, this is a trend that we're also seeing in the past year. It's like we're finding out the very minutia, the details of how things work in the body. And it may seem a little, like, okay, well, that's technically how it works, but who really cares? It's like, if you want to fix it or you want to mimic it with, artificial cartilage and stuff like that, knowing exactly how it works is a big first step. So,
and Ben, and think about this challenge. Here you are in a lab and you're saying, here's our challenge, folks. We need a bottom layer that's stiff, vertical fibers attached to the bone. We need a middle layer that can absorb impact. And we need a top layer that's smooth, lubricating, and flexible. That's a daunting challenge. But I want to, the article, however, Ben, gets into why, what's the challenge here? Yeah. So cartilage lacks blood vessels, so it can't heal itself. Oh, that's not good. Current treatments include pain relievers, sort of glossing over, or costly joint replacement surgeries. And in the United States, annually, you're looking at about $140 billion of these sort of procedures in the U.S. every year. Yikes. And lab-grown cartilage so far has been too soft, limiting its use to only small repairs. So, Ben, that's the problem they're facing.
Yeah, this cartilage that, it really is one of the few things in the body that's like, it's a predefined amount. You get what you get, and if you damage it or it wears down, that's kind of it for you. But no, hopefully this, this story has a little bit of a positive spin to it.
Absolutely, and it's certainly a great example of medical technology research in artificial tissues that could have impact to millions upon millions of people every year all across the globe. So this is potentially very profound. So going on here, it says, in their proof of concept work, the Washington State University researchers developed a bioreactor that uses stem cells from bone marrow to grow cartilage with properties that vary with position. So again, this references the 3-layer challenge of the material. And a side note, a bioreactor is a controlled vessel or system that provides an optimal environment for biological processes such as growing cells, tissues, or microorganisms, or carrying out biochemical reactions. So if you're not familiar with the term bioreactor, that's what that's all about. So the researchers used surface shear, which is a physical force, to encourage the stem cells on the bioreactor to grow in certain ways, again, to replicate the 3-layer nature of natural cartilage. As fluid moves through the tapered bioreactor, the amount of surface shear changes, which encourages the cells to produce cartilage that is more flexible at one location and stiffer at another, mimicking natural cartilage tissue. Wow. Okay. And future applications, well, beyond cartilage, the approach could be adapted for ligaments, cardiopulmonary tissue, renal or kidney tissue, liver or neuronal. I can't even say it. Neuron.
Neuronal?
Yeah, Neuronal. I don't know why I'm
Mm-hmm.
tongue tied on that. Tissue engineering. So again, the point being is this could be applicable to multiple other things. And to wrap it up here, this breakthrough combines biomechanical forces and genetic feedback to grow cartilage that closely resembles natural joint tissue, potentially reducing reliance on invasive surgeries and opening doors for broader tissue engineering applications. So this story, great, uplifting, positive news that could impact so many people going forward in the future. And salute to Washington State University and Cornell for this great, great breakthrough.
Yeah, it's even beyond just the other tissues, just even tackling the seemingly very limited topic of just replacing cartilage, that would help so many people.
Oh, yeah.
I can't imagine. That is one of the defining things of just aging and pain is just fixing that cartilage. So hey, there's hope. Yeah, so story number 4, ladies and gentlemen, if you've been following along, you can see there that is it for the numbered stories, but we have other stories that are not numbered, but are rather grouped unceremoniously into these honorable mentions. And these are not less, these are not worse, these are simply stories that we don't have time for. We're trying to keep the show a bit more condensed for your listening pleasure, and therefore you can come out to computeramerica.com, go to today's show notes, which by the time that you hear this will be up on the site, and you can find honorable mentions in the show notes at the bottom. And these are going to be stories that you should definitely know about, you should hear about, you should read about them, or even see the videos that Ralph has included in the links. And all of these stories worth your time. We're going to go ahead and give you the headlines, and then you can come out to Computer America and you can, of course, find them there. So, Ralph, let's do headlines.
Yeah, exactly. This first one has to do with Russia, and these days it's hard to find anything very positive about our friends in Russia. Ugh. Anyway, but Aerospace Global News is the source. Headline: Russian airline introduces a humanoid robot cabin crew member on flights. Well, if nothing else, it's just a hoot to see this thing. There's a video and links in the show notes here. You can check it out. It's kind of a interesting looking bot, a little bit spooky in a way, but kind of fascinating. And the idea, I suppose there's maybe a labor shortage in the world of airline attendants and so forth, and whether this robot makes any sense or not, TBD, but it's kind of a fun story in the field of robotics.
It's not the biggest headline in Russian robotics that we've seen lately. There was other one of the presentation round.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that. That's had a little accident in his debut.
Yeah.
So
they're presenting it to Putin, and what falls down.
Yeah, it was did not do too well. So hopefully this one does not fall down the middle of the aisle, throwing a tantrum as well. But no, the only thing I can imagine, Ralph, is that this is almost like, I don't know, almost like a service bot, I guess, that like bring you drinks or do this, just kind of lighten the workload, hopefully, of people that are, working these flights. So who knows?
Could be
automation.
TBD. Well, the next honorable mention comes from simpleflying.com. Headline: A new generation ? Could Rolls-Royce's hydrogen engine concept redefine jet power? This is a really interesting one in terms of hydrogen in the field of airplanes and so forth. And this is something, you and I have seen this trend over and over and over again in the last several years about the aviation industry's fascination with hydrogen-powered engines. So that's something to look at. Check that one out. The next honorable mention is from dailygalaxy.com. Scientists just unveiled a lunar robot so smart it might replace astronauts. That's an interesting, another robotics story. That's kind of fun. And
robots today can't even replace, basic service function, basic human interactions. There's still non-self checkout lines in the grocery store. In fact, I think even self checkout at grocery stores kind of getting, beaten back a little bit because people just don't like them all that much. Like, it's hard to imagine that, we can take a basic skill and say robots can replace it. And then we take the most highly skilled humans and say that robots can replace them. Maybe augment or help them. as well. But
I agree.
Maybe not
I think
replace.
that's right on target. Yeah, augmentation, I think, is instead of replace. I agree with that. And our last honorable mention, I think this is our last one. Yep, it is. This is a fun one, very seasonal. So this comes from newscientist.com. Headline, the 19 best Christmas gifts for science lovers and nerds. Is there a difference? And this is a fun story. I encourage you, if you're looking for gift ideas, one of the things they talk about is this really cool telescope that also interacts with your smartphone, and it's a very clever gift item. So check this out. Again, they have 19 gift ideas if you're shopping for a nerd science nut in your family, young or old. This has some great suggestions.
Absolutely. Just looking through real quick, and they have everything from an egg cracker to a sack of rocks, which, of course, by sack of rocks, I mean geodes. But still, no, this is a very cool list. So, yeah,
it is a very thoughtful list. Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
Stuff.
Getting to be about that time. And yeah, you can go ahead and check that out there. That'll be at the bottom. So with that being said, we're going to hit that button right there. And Ralph, I want to thank you so much for pulling this all together and, of course, getting all of this to us and sharing this with us. Ladies and gentlemen, computeramerica.com. Once again, that's where you'll find today's show, past show. Ralph has a ton of past shows that if you want to check that out, don't worry. Shows from 6 months ago, a year ago, they're still relevant because they're so cutting edge, and we encourage you to go back and listen to more if you find, hey, that you have time. Go check it out. With that being said, thank you for tuning into Computer America. We appreciate it a lot, and we will be back as well. Everyone, I hope you have a great weekend. You do something fun. Can't imagine a better way to spend a Friday. Ralph, thank you. Everyone, catch you next time. Bye-bye.